Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Drop Dead Serious. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this week is a big week, especially if you're Karen Reid, because the headline screams, it is on. They've got their jury and they've got their start time. And if you haven't yet made plans for Tuesday, take the day off, true crime fans, because opening statements in her retrial are going to be epic. Not just inside the courtroom, outside the courtroom, too. If the past is any prelude, hundreds of Karen Reid supporters will be marching down to the courthouse and screaming their lungs out. They'll be wearing pink and hoisting homemade signs demanding justice for Karen Reid, which in their estimation is an all-out exoneration. They believe she is being railroaded by crooked cops who are trying to pin their dirty work on her, meaning they think the cops want her to take the fall for the death of her boyfriend, a police officer named John O'Keefe. Karen Reid's theory has those officers killing her boyfriend at a late-night house party full of cops and staging a big cover-up for reasons I'm going to get to in just a minute. But the cops and the Commonwealth, their theory is that she killed him with her SUV, that she was drunk and angry, and that she used her vehicle as a weapon to mow him down and leave him to die in the snow outside that party. And now, after years of courtroom mayhem and headlines and protests and a full mistrial, the Karen Reid saga is officially on track. And there is no sign that this case has cooled down. If anything, the temperature is rising. Today, we're going to break down where the case stands as they get ready for court, what to expect as the retrial begins, and the ammo that each side has as they walk into that courtroom. Because whether you believe Karen Reid backed over her boyfriend in a drunken rage, or if she's the scapegoat in a cover-up involving law enforcement, there is no denying this. It is a vexing mystery and one of the most explosive trials in America right now. Karen Reid's first jury was deadlocked, and a mistrial was declared last July after 10 weeks of testimony and 5 days of deliberations, including a last-minute Allen charge urging the jurors to come to a decision, which, of course, did not work. So now it's time for round two. I want to start with the basics of this case. Karen Reid is facing 3 charges: second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence, and leaving the scene of a fatal accident. The Commonwealth says she hit her boyfriend with her SUV in the middle of a blizzard and then left that Boston police officer to die in the front yard of a fellow officer's home. But Karen Reid says that house, 34 Fairview Road, that house holds all the answers, and that the people inside that house, including cops, are the ones hiding what really happened to fellow officer John O'Keefe. So what do the prosecutors have on Karen Reid? And what does Karen Reid have up her sleeve? Let's set the table. Joining me now is Caitlyn Becker, NewsNation's national correspondent, who is on the ground in Massachusetts covering the case. Caitlyn, it does not bode well that the state has experts who say that Karen Reid's SUV went in reverse, I think at 24 miles an hour for about 60 feet that night.
24 miles an hour sounds pretty fast to be going in reverse. I mean, if you're reversing, you're usually going 4, 5 pretty slowly considering the conditions that were on the ground that night. It was blizzarding, and the fact that she had had a lot of drinks. Add that together with those few numbers, it does not bode well at all.
No, I think that's strong in the state's column. And then this is a weird one. The voicemails that Karen Reid left for John O'Keefe that night, man, they were bad drunk dials, right? She's screaming, you pervert, I'm looking after these kids. What the hell? She's really, really angry. So it does kind of put one up in the state's column that she is mad as hell at this boyfriend.
It really does play into this narrative that she was barking mad that night, so angry with him. They had been having problems that this culminated this night after a night of drinking. And I know I've been there before when you're drinking and you're mad about something from earlier and it all comes out. They have her voice. They have it clear as day. Well, not that clear because she's very kind of slurry in there. All those expletives, fuming. She was fuming mad. So yeah, it does. It plays into this narrative that she was pissed and upset and she dropped him off and she peeled out of that driveway and didn't look back. But then you hear the 911 calls and then you hear that she did CPR the next day. And then you hear the juxtaposition of those two leads me questioning, was she mad enough?
Well, and I'll tell you what, in a little bit, once we get to Karen's column and all the ammo she's got, I'm going to bring these voicemails back because I have a personal feeling about a woman scorned. And I think any woman on the jury's be like, damn, girl. Yeah, I get that. I'll explain that in a hot minute. But let's start here with John's DNA, because this is also, I think, very strong for the state. His DNA is found on the taillight, and a hair of John's is found on the car.
It's her car. They rode in that car. Is that a way that you can kind of write that off? Maybe the taillight? I don't know how else someone's DNA would get on a part of a vehicle like that if they didn't have contact. It just seems like they had to have contact with that part of it in order for that to have transferred. It does seem very strong. And you add that together with the fact that they had both been drinking all night, the fact that she shouldn't have been behind the wheel, the fact that she was really angry. And then you put all of those together with really bad conditions, visibility could be low. Maybe she wasn't even looking. Is it plausible?
Well, guess what? As a Winnipeg girl who grew up in -40 and often as a dumb, early driver, forgot to put the stick with the scraper and the brush in the car, and I'd have to use my hands. I often would use my hands to scrape the snow and ice away from the headlights or the taillights. So I'm wondering if John O'Keefe may have done the same thing. And I'm wondering if the defense attorneys might even think of that, because Alan Jackson's, a California boy. They do have local counsel, and it is, nasty weather in Massachusetts. But that, and by the way,
would have thought of that.
Really? Well, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm from South Jersey, so it snows there, but it doesn't snow too much, and just doesn't seem like I've never seen snow so piled up that you would actually have to peel it off of the back of your taillights. I didn't even consider that.
I have many a time, my gloves are in my purse and I'm in a hurry. I'm like, dang it, I'll just use and your hands freeze and they hurt. And the ice hurts, like it burns. Yeah, I have done that. So I could see that being one of the defenses. But the thing about the hair, everybody said, hell no, a single hair is not going to cling to the side of a car where the impact zone might have been. For the 60 miles that she drove, however far she drove after the party, and then later the towing. And to that I say, have you ever seen what blizzard conditions do to the side of your car? Like it ices stuff on the side of your car. Well, then the hair might have been iced up against the side of the car for that, all the driving and the towing. So I don't actually have a problem with the hair sticking to the car. But the biggie, there's evidence of a Google search. How long to die in the cold? It's actually Hoss long to die in the cold. HOS as opposed to W. I've made that typo lots. How long to die in the cold? It's allegedly made at 2:27 a.m. I'm talking about the prosecution's column here. And that does not fit in the prosecution's column unless and until you hear their explanation for that.
They say it didn't actually happen at 2:27 in the morning. They say it actually happened after the body was found, something after 6 a.m., around 6 a.m. when they're questioning where he could be. Could he be out there? That certainly plausible. But if there's data that the defense can show that shows it was Googled at 2:27 in the morning. And mind you, this is Googled by Jennifer McCabe, who was in the house, the last person to talk to John O'Keefe that night before whatever happened to him outside of that house or inside of that house. She was the last known communication. Why would someone in the house be Googling something that specific? I Google some weird stuff.
Right, but
that's
dang specific.
That's oddly specific considering what happened. And the HOS, you're so right. I've done that too. And you do it when you're rushing. You do it when you're rushing. You do it when you're not really paying attention. You just need the answer to something that maybe you're not typing in so clearly, or maybe you've had a few drinks, or maybe it's really late. So if they can actually convince the jury that this was done at 2:27, I don't know how you justify that. But if the prosecution can, almost to your point, create that kernel of, but it could have been 6, just like, well, it could have stuck to the car. The hair could have stuck to the car in the ice. Then is that enough to be like, well, it's plausible?
It's called the reasonable doubt. Like, how much do you need to build for it to be reasonable, right? Your doubt needs to be reasonable. You got to build up enough of that doubt for it to be reasonable, not beyond a shadow of, just here, the reasonable, and everybody's reasonable factor is a little different, right? We all have a different radar inside us. So for one guy, it might be, that's why you get a hung jury. So interestingly, her argument is that, hell no, I got an expert who says this Google happened at 2:27 a.m., which means it was not me. Jen McCabe did it. She did it after I had long gone. And then, Jen McCabe, or the state's expert, says if she opened a window at 2:27 a.m. and who among us doesn't in bed, open a Google window at some point, and then made the search hours later, I think it's 6:27 a.m., it would appear to be the time of the Google would appear to be when the window was opened. So
I
the
have
battle
one
of the
open
experts
on my phone right now. I literally have one, and I have so many other tabs because I went to look something up earlier, and it's just sitting here. I have no idea what time that would read when I Google something later.
Well, when you have 2 different experts, and that's what they did in the last trial, then the jury's left with, well, damn, I don't know which expert to believe. So out that goes. It could either be strong or it might not be anything at all if they have to, ditch it because it's even Steven on both columns. Let's talk about the taillight fragments. If you only hear that the state has broken taillight fragments at the scene where John's body was found and a broken taillight on Karen Reed's SUV, it sounds like open and shut case.
Absolutely. It sounds like, how can you get one thing without the other? And who ends up in the crosshairs? The person who got hit. That's exactly what that sounds like. It almost sounds too easy. As you said, open and shut. If it's that simple, it's okay. Well, there you go. She did a 3-point turn out of there. He was behind there. She hit him. She peeled out of the driveway and that was it. And the taillight fragments were there, and case closed. It's not that simple, though.
It sure isn't.
Not that simple, especially because it was a blizzardy night. And I know that they were using, the next day when they found this, or when they were finally discovering these things, they were using leaf blowers to blow some of the snow out of the way to uncover the evidence. Some of the bloody stuff was put in solo cups. So evidence collection was all over the place. But her side says it doesn't matter because it was planted.
Well, and I'll tell you what, these cops are under the microscope for a lot of behavior that has nothing to do with Karen Reed, other cases that has been really sketchy. And so for Karen Reed to say in the documentary, all it would take is them to sprinkle some pieces, and there you go. It's there. It's on the scene, and the cops, have planted evidence. It's such an easy thing to do. It's, you're less likely to believe that stuff if you haven't heard of dirty cop work before in the community. So I could see these jurors of her peers thinking, okay, I might believe that. And there's plenty coming up in our conversation that will show that that is plausible, not just a guess, not just a random thought that the cops are dirty. There's stuff. And we're going to talk about that in a hot minute, because I think it's really important, the business of the taillight. Interesting that the police only found the taillight fragments many hours later, not at the time that they found the broken cocktail glass and John O'Keefe's blood and all the rest in the snow. They're leaf blowing away and they see all that stuff. But then the red lights, the red tail, which should have been like glowing in white snow, those weren't found hours and many days later, which is, your spidey senses get going there. Okay, let's talk about Karen Reed's interviews. I love the documentary so much. I watched it twice. And I'm like total nerd, right? But I also watched it twice because I wanted to take notes, because after a while I started to see things that she was saying that I thought were important. And as it turns out, the state thinks so too.
What did you make of her demeanor? For me, her demeanor said, at first I was like, okay, she's kind of just whatevering it. This is still someone that you cared for, that you loved, that you cared enough to fight with that night, that you had a relationship with. And even though time has passed and even though she had been through so much, did she seem a little flippant at times? And then I was looking at that when the same sort of tone when she was taking with, I was drunk. We drank a lot. I was drunk. And I'm like, yeah, you were, and you went home. I can kind of buy it.
I felt a few things. First, she was not the person I thought she looked like. She was really kind of rough around the edges, you know? That's the first implication that videotape gave me in terms of her, you know, sitting for an interview. The next thing is she was very matter of fact about everything. But I know from working in this business that after you have been up against a prosecution for years, you are hardened. You have now boiled this down to a science. You are fighting for your life. You're no longer the grieving girlfriend. You've become something far more than that. And then on top of that, this was a boyfriend. This wasn't a husband. They didn't have children together. She didn't lose her life with him. This was a guy she was dating. And even then kind of seemed like they were on the rocks. So I could see that there wasn't a whole lot of love there anyway. And then, damn it, this guy I was fighting with now is ruining my life. I could see that being part of her hard shell. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I see some of that demeanor at court because I've been here. I'm literally in a residence inn in Dedham, Massachusetts right now because I was at a hearing and I'm going to be there for opening statements. And I saw Karen just a few hours ago. I asked her a couple questions. I was able to talk to her outside of court, but I see some of that exact same behavior. Every time she walks in and out of the courtroom, she addresses the media because she feels like she has something to say and she is fighting for her life. And even inside of the courtroom, it's much of the same behavior. She's just trying to kind of get through the day. We saw that first day with jury selection. You said it on the show. She's walking in eating chips. She had her chips on her way in. Today it was granola bars. She has her snacks. Very much she's treating this like I need to get through all of these things today in order to get to the next day, to the next day, to the next day, which will hopefully end with my freedom. And you can feel that energy from her in person. But she said she was really tired today. She's more tired than she was last time. That's what she told me.
I could totally see her having a demeanor of, I need to get my shit done, period. That's what this is about. I need to get my shit done. But let me just add a few other things to the statements that she made in her documentary that I think the state is going to play like at 11. The fact that she said, I don't want to testify. So this interview is my testimony because I don't want to testify. That does not look good in front of jurors because, of course, testimony is under oath. TV, you can lie, you know.
You also
don't
get convicted on TV. She can say whatever she wants, you know.
It's not illegal.
Stakes are not high.
You and I do not lie on television. It is not illegal to lie on television. Therefore, the state could easily say, how convenient, Karen Reid. You can say what you want to say any way you want to say it because you're not under oath and you're not perjuring yourself on television. It's not going to look good for a jury. Then the other thing that she said in the doc that I also think they will play at 11. And I don't mean o'clock. I mean, you know, turn it up to 11.
Dialed up.
I think they're going to play her words where she says, I don't know, like early on, I don't know if I hit him. Like maybe I did. I'm asking myself. I'm not sure. You know, meeting with my lawyers. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I did hit him. I think they're going to use those words to say, you didn't seem to know back then, so proximate to the incident, but you sure seem to know now, years later. Do you know what I mean? I think that's powerful as well for the state.
They have an arsenal of clips that they're going to play. Today, it was the defense said that they were given a list of 44 different clips that they were given. 44 different clips that they were given as possibilities by the prosecution because they put all these motions to say they're going to play these clips. And outside of court, Karen said, bring it on. I would never have said it if I didn't stand by it. Let's go. But you're right. Clipping it up, taking it out of context, couching it in a different way that she is not controlling the narrative is going to look a lot different. And I do know that in opening statements, they're going to play roughly 15-second clip. So it sounds a little bit as you're saying the parts that stood out to you, like the one that said, I don't know, maybe I hit him. That seems like a good 15-second clip there. Reid's team does know what the clip is. She wouldn't tell us what it was outside of court, but I know that there's going to be a 15-second clip, but 44 possible Karen Reid clips. So if she chooses not to testify, they will use the words that benefit them in those 44 clips to almost create her testimony for them. It's going to be
well, and I wonder if Alan Jackson and team, her defense attorneys, will use clips from the documentary as well. Although I don't think they can. I'm trying to remember if they do, does that open the door where she might have to testify? I don't know. They might be able to. No, they might be able to.
My understanding, though, is if the prosecution opens the door to playing the clips, then they can probably do whatever they want.
Then they can do what they want. But I'll tell you something. No matter how, and Alan Jackson's super good at his job, by the way. I have followed him for 20 years. He's very, very good at what he does. And he don't think for a moment he didn't okay this project with investigation discovery, right? They wanted the jury pool to know who she was for the retrial. They wanted to get ahead of it and let the jury pool know about the whole circus, including the bad behavior of the cops and all the rest. So in that regard, it's smart. But as a lawyer, you're not the mouth of the client when the client's being interviewed. And the client can say things that you as a lawyer realize, she doesn't realize how that will be used against her. To her, it sounds normal. But as lawyers, we know how to twist it. That's the stuff I think maybe Alan Jackson thought Karen was smarter than she was. I think Karen's smart, but I do think that certain things she said in the documentary were suicidal.
And then and they didn't fight. They're not fighting it either. They're not fighting the use of these clips. So
you can't.
So it seems like they're opening up the door. Yeah.
You give a media interview, that is all fair game. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You do not get privilege when you stand in front of a microphone. That's for sure.
And to your point of they wanted the jury pool to know about this case. The jury pool does know. Following jury selection, I was there for some of it. The majority of the jurors who walked in that door said, yep, I know I know everything about this case. I've heard of this case. I have at least heard of Karen Read. I'm familiar with it. That was never an issue, at least for the judge or really either side. They both went into this retrial with the understanding that the majority of the people who will walk in that room, the nearly hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prospective jurors, will have heard of Karen Read. It was, of course, the ones that had been formulated an opinion or knew a witness, or they were the ones that were booted off. But everyone's starting at a much different level in this playing field as a juror as you get than with a traditional trial or even with this first trial. It's a totally different ballgame.
I honestly believe in my heart there are stealth jurors everywhere. And I would not doubt for a hot minute that there might be someone on that panel who might have worn a pink t-shirt out front of the courthouse had they not had jury duty. And they answer the questions just like they think the prosecutors want to hear. Of course, I can be fair and impartial. Of course, yes, I've seen the media, but yes, I can be fair and impartial when they aren't planning to be. That happens all the time. Stealth jurors get on juries all the time. It's just how good they are at hiding their biases. But
it's wild in this case, think of.
It's wild, right? And they might want to write a book. There are all sorts of reasons you might want to be on a jury. We might want to write a book. You might want to do a documentary. You might want to stealthily get someone off a case. Let's talk about what's in Karen Read's column, because I think she has an enormous column coming into this trial that does not bode well for this prosecution at all. Let's start with the lead investigator in the case, Trooper Michael Proctor. Take it from there.
This guy, the lead investigator on the case, talking, texting, disparaging the person he's investigating in this case. He said some vulgar, heinous things pretty publicly to colleagues, coworkers, friends.
Chat group
about Karen Read. I mean, it's investigation kind of 101 that you don't talk smack about the people you're investigating if you want to try to secure a conviction at some point. It's almost silly. What he admitted to saying about her and texting about her on the stand was wildly inappropriate. And Michael Proctor, after the mistrial, was suspended from his job. He was sent to a board review for his behavior, and he's been kicked off the force for good. They took permanent disciplinary action against this man. And now he will get up and he will read these comments again and he will testify again. And I'm guessing the defense will have the ability to say, and what do you do for a living right now? Not be a trooper. So that's how to find out that this man lost his entire career because of how he acted investigating the person who's on trial. It's gold for the defense.
Yeah. I don't know that the prosecutors will call him. I mean, I know that the prosecutors wanted to have like a proxy to come in and read statements, et cetera. And I'm guessing maybe for Trooper Michael Proctor, so they don't have to get him up on the stand to answer under cross.
He's on the defense. He's on the defense list.
Yeah, well, I would call him if I were the defense.
Me too.
But then the bummer for that is that the state gets to cross as well and get a lot of his work in there. But here are some of the things that lest our listeners may have missed it in round one of her trial. And if you have sensitive ears or you're a God-fearing Christian,
this isn't for you.
This is X-rated. This is dirty, dirty, dirty. All right. So Michael Proctor, within hours, honestly, just within hours of this investigation beginning, is chatting with his, colleagues on a group text, calling her a whack job, a quote, C-U-N-T. I'm not going to say it, but spelling it's bad enough. Quote, no nudes so far. That's what he says as he's going through her phone. He says, quote, hopefully she kills herself. To his sister, he texted about Karen, quote, she's a bitch, quote, she's effed. And he used the expletive, not the F. And there was a whole bunch more too. But like you said, he got the boot. So I don't know how he's going to be involved in this case. I mean, it's good for the defense to have it, but not good if the prosecutors get to cross-examine and bring out all the good stuff that he found in his investigation. Let's talk about the surveillance video at John O'Keefe's home. I love this because it's such a twist. Remember when I said just a few moments ago, wow, it's like open and shut. If you see red tail light pieces at the scene of the dead body and she's got a broken tail light, case closed, right? Bum, bum, bum. There's surveillance video outside of John O'Keefe's home at 5:30 in the morning. That is many hours after John O'Keefe is presumably killed and left in the snow. And that surveillance video has Karen Reed backing up her SUV. Again, after John O'Keefe is already dead in the snow. She's backing up her SUV. And what happens, Caitlin?
The video's kind of blurry. It looks like she taps a car behind her.
100%.
That's what it looked like to me
100.
The first time I saw it. And I was like, am I seeing this right? Is that her? But also, I mean, that doesn't bode well for her driving skills.
She was loaded.
Tapping a car probably at 5 o'clock in the morning. Absolutely. But that's what it looks like. It's this slow turn back. And we don't lie. Me and Ashleigh don't lie.
That's right.
I hate to admit that I myself have backed my car up and tapped into a parked car.
Girl.
And you kind of see, no damage was done in my case, thank goodness. I'm a very good driver. But you know that when you hit something and you see the car that you hit kind of wiggle,
yep,
because it's not, and you see that.
Yes.
And then you see the car pull out.
Yeah, John O'Keefe's
quality's
vehicle.
Not great.
Yeah, John O'Keefe's vehicle definitely moved when Karen Reed's vehicle hit it. And I'll go one further here. Karen's car made contact with John O'Keefe's car. Where? The passenger tail light, the tail light of
In
record.
question.
Yeah, the questionable, the rear passenger side tail light hit John O'Keefe's car and caused John O'Keefe's car to wiggle and move. So I think if you show that to a jury and say, do you think this might be where her taillight broke? Do you think maybe the taillight pieces broke inward into the casing and that's where they were held? That brings me to my next point. And that is when her car was taken by the police and towed into the sallyport, that is where you would assume an officer would inspect that rear passenger side taillight. And what did we see? We saw an image of nothing happening at all, like nobody stealing pieces from inside the rear passenger taillight, until what did we learn about the image that we were looking at?
The sallyport image, it's mirrored. It's reversed. It's not what you see is not what the reality is. It's the switch side. So when they see it in court the first time around, they're saying, look, look at this. It's that side. It's the right side, not the left side, but it's the left side, not the right side. So to find out that the image that was being used in court to explain away this damage, this is where it is not actually accurate.
That's right.
And the defense also was accusing prosecutors or investigators of not having all the footage, saying that they gave them the sallyport video piecemeal, that they're not giving them the entire thing. They're only getting bits and pieces. I think they used the word dribs and drabs in a court document. So they're saying that we're not even seeing everything that happened along the time that this car was in custody of the police department.
Yeah, it's real shifty. It's real shifty that image was mirrored. And but for an eagle eye that spotted a cruiser in the foreground with the words police backwards, they realized, oh my God, this is reversed. We're not looking at the side of the car we think we're looking at. So that changed everything for me as well.
Michael Proctor on the stand was the one who said, look, that's the taillight. It's over there. This is the one that would have hit him. And it's the reverse of literally everything he testified to. It's the opposite. It's not that one. It's this one. And he was this questionable investigator saying questionable things. He even went after poor Karen Reed's Crohn's disease, mocking her for that at some point. He's the one that's going to tell the jury, no, this is what you're seeing. And now we find out it's the opposite. Yeah. Does not look good.
The other thing I think is odd in this case, and I think Karen Reed makes a good point of this in her column, is that the homeowner, Brian Alpert, who is a police officer, right, never stepped foot outside that home. There is a cacophony of activity on his front lawn. There are lights going, there are EMTs, there are police, there are women screaming. Never once, as a police officer, steps foot outside that home and says he never even heard the screaming going on. I'm sorry, what?
The fact that the reports of what Karen Reed sounded like during the 911 call was she's hysterical. That's the word that was being used and thrown around by the people on the scene. The first responders who were there, she's hysterical. When someone is hysterical, they're screaming basically bloody murder. I know you and I are the two of the nosiest people around. If you see police lights on your street and you see a ruckus happening, we're out the window if it's not even our house. If it's happening on your property, how don't you hear? How did no one there knock on the door and check and see who was home? On top of that, he is a first responder. Your literal career is to be the person who gets called to come to things like this. How is the first thing you do not run out of the house to see what is going on? And they were there for a while. It's not like it was a quick drive-by and they left. I don't know how long that all of this was happening on the scene that he just didn't, I refuse to believe he didn't hear anything.
I have a tough time believing it because I'm not a police officer and I would have been out there saying, what is happening? What's going on my lawn? And that's a non-police officer. Yes, I'm a reporter, but any person who's got a bunch of cops on their lawn at 5:30 in the morning and a woman screaming, you're not sleeping through that. And you are going to be opening your front door and saying, good God, what's happening? But it is awfully curious.
And how can I help?
How can I help?
What's going on? How can I help?
How can I help? I mean, it is nuts, to think, honestly, that a police officer heard nothing, saw nothing, slept all through it. Okay. The other thing, John O'Keefe had no broken bones and no injuries below the waist. The last time I stood next to an SUV, if I got hit by it, the bumper or the side, I feel like I would have damage low down. I wouldn't have a crack on the back of my head. I would have damage to the rest of me. Certainly the kind of accident that leads to your death. It seemed very weird. But he also had all these really strange scratches all over his arm. And they sure looked to me like dog bites and dog scratches.
They definitely look to me like scratches. I don't know if I see the bite as much as the scratch. There was a German Shepherd in the home, Chloe. Chloe was brought up today in court in these last pre-trial motions about whether or not they're going to be able to get a mold of Chloe's bite and it needs an overlay in the signs. They're going to argue this pretty minute, very much granularly in this trial. Chloe was rehomed, so Chloe's not
Whoa,
around.
yeah,
So
there's that. Chloe
Chloe's the
German
around.
Shepherd. Right. Chloe the German Shepherd, who belongs to Brian Alpert in that party home, the home in question, suddenly gets rehomed months later.
Yeah, that to me doesn't look great. The explanation of the scratches, because it's the defense's contention that something happened in the home and somehow the dog got involved, and so there were scratches and bites. So playing sort of the other side here, Ash. What do you think about? I had my own little theory of, okay, so let's imagine a world that Karen Read accidentally hits him. She doesn't know. How does that explain the injuries only being to basically the back of the head and none of the lower body or the torso? Mm-hmm. What if he was bent over? What if that's why the cocktail glass was there? He puts the cocktail glass on the back of the thing. Maybe he slips, maybe he drops his phone, maybe he ties his shoe. He's bent over. Maybe he's not seen. So the car backs up, hits him this way. And then you'd presumably either fall forward or maybe he tried to crawl away. But that would explain why there are no injuries to his lower body. That doesn't explain the scratches. Yeah. But if he was found face down, maybe that would explain that. But we don't have any images of how he was found.
I have some theories here.
Photos.
They didn't take the pictures. I love how you think, first of all. There's a million things I love about you, but I love how you think when it's about forensics and when it's about true crime. I'm going to bring my Winnipeg back, okay? Because I grew up in blizzards as, par for the course. And if you try to make some quick maneuvers, your footing ain't good. And I could see him, let's just say, if Karen's coming back at him 24 miles an hour, 60 feet, and he's like, holy shit, trying to backpedal or get out of the way. He's also loaded and he's holding that cocktail glass. I could see him wiping out, losing his footing, up come the feet, bang, car hits him, maybe spins him over. Maybe he gets scraped by something on the car, the ice that's built up on the side of the car. Maybe that would make a pattern. Oh. Possibly. But I also heard somebody say something super wild and crazy. Let's just say he didn't get his arm scraped with that, but he did get clocked because of the lose your footing, up come your feet. You're now, almost parallel. Car hits you in the back of the head, sends you flying. This area is sort of remote and it's apparently dense with foxes.
Oh.
And you know what? I misspoke. I don't think it's foxes. I think it's coyotes. Yeah, I think it's coyotes. So let's just say John is now dying in the snow and one of these little coyotes comes along, one or two, and starts scraping at him, but he's not dead. And he's able to fend them off in some way. That would account for the scratches on the arm.
I also wonder if it is in fact Chloe. Were they a family who let the dog out to pee in the front yard, or were they a family who let the dog out to pee in the backyard? Lights are off. Maybe it's the middle of the night. You let Chloe out. If
really
I was
smart.
laying in the snow, my dog would come over and probably try to paw you and rouse you. That to me actually makes a lot of sense. If I were on questioning someone on the stand, I would ask Brian Alpert and everyone else who owned Chloe at the time, late at night, did you let her out front or did you let her out back?
That's
because
really
maybe
smart.
Nobody saw him.
You know what? I hadn't thought of that. Was Chloe let out front? People don't typically let their dogs out in the front yard unless they have an electric fence. I don't know if they did or if they didn't.
But when I tell you, there's no driving traffic on this road and it's a big front yard. You have to imagine also there's a house full of people. Maybe someone was leaving. Let's let Chloe out to go.
Good point.
And if the body is kind of in the corner off of where the driveway is.
50 yards away from the front door, right? The body
it's totally reasonable. And the front door, and then there's the driveway and the garage. And so it was to the side of that. So I don't think it's completely implausible to think they let Chloe out and Chloe pawed at what
John O'Keefe tried to wake him up.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I keep coming back to, okay, if Karen's right, and since we're in Karen's column right now with all the things she's bringing to court and into the trial, John O'Keefe, as she describes it, gets out of the car with the cocktail glass and she sees him go in that middle door of the house, the one that's just off to the right of the front door. Breezeway, I think it's sort of considered. and he's met in the breezeway by, let's just say, Brian Higgins. Brian Higgins is a friend of Brian Albert's, right? And he's also law enforcement. I think he's federal. I think he's ATF. And he's been sexting with Karen, right? Secretly, Brian Higgins is at the party. He's been sexting with John O'Keefe's girlfriend, and maybe, just maybe, John O'Keefe found out about it. And there are words. And maybe they go down to the basement right away with him, with John O'Keefe, and the words get heated. The dog is there. They start scrapping. The dog attacks him. He falls back, hits his head. Then it's like, holy shit, what do we do now? None of this was supposed to happen. And that's the cover up, perhaps. Maybe that's the fight that, led to an accidental death that led to a cover up, if you're Karen Read.
Could you, though, fathom a world where all of those members of law enforcement would do this and discard the body on his property?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. Number one, if he came into the breezeway, it's very possible a lot of people at the party didn't even know he had arrived, right? Because the breezeway is separate, I think, from the house. It's not simple to see.
Mm-hmm.
Could have come in, immediately gotten into words and said, enough, down here, I have words with you. And down they went to the basement, and this all could have happened without everybody knowing. And then the idea is what to do about it. Well, Karen just dropped him off. Let's get the body out there and make it look like she hit him. On her way out, she was hammered. It could have been a drunk driving accident. She could probably beat it just as a drunk driving accident. She might be able to beat it because they don't have her drunk on the scene. By the time, they find the body in the morning, she won't be drunk anymore. That might have been the thinking. We'll just make it look like the person who dropped him off was so hammered they didn't even know that they'd hit him.
That was my initial thought when this whole story kind of broke years ago. That was my initial thought, that she had at least 9 drinks. She was really drunk. She never should have been behind the wheel of a car with a police officer who has an open container, a cup of alcohol in their hand. Like, nobody should have been driving that night, let alone in these conditions. Yeah, it sounded totally plausible to me that would have been the initial thought process. That's interesting. The breezeway, and nobody probably even knew he was there.
It's possible. And there you have not everybody is in on the conspiracy. They really believe what they're saying. Do you know what I mean? They have plausible deniability.
Yep, because how do you convince a jury of, at this point, 18, because this is an enormous jury, there's 12 and a ton of alternates. How do you convince them that many people
have to be in line,
agreed to the same story the same way for years now, not deviating from it in enough for anyone to raise any sort of alarm bells?
I will say this. It worked at OJ. It will, because this jury in OJ thought that so many different law enforcement entities were all in cahoots forever on planting blood. And it's like, are you kidding me? You can't even get them to file a report together.
Yeah. I
sometimes
can't get my family to agree on dinner.
Yeah, but the jury believed it in OJ. The jury believed that hundreds of these people must have all worked in a cahoot. So you can get some juries to believe. But I'm with you. I don't think a jury reasonably would believe that all of those
13 people
would have perjured and done all this and believed it and not changed stories and not leaked it somewhere. But they may not have known. I think that's the easier way to come to that.
Saw that.
So now let's talk about what Brian Higgins did with his phone, because he's got all this prior sexting, right? He's flirting with Karen Read, who's got a boyfriend who he knows. And he now knows that all those text messages are on the phone, and it looks like he's got motive, right? So
you got to delete them.
Delete, and then what?
What did he delete and then delete the deletes?
You know what he did? He got rid of that phone. He didn't just get rid of it. He destroyed the SIM card.
Oh,
and then
what it was.
He threw the phone away at a military base that he had to drive through to get. I don't know. For some reason, I think it was on a pathway home.
That doesn't look sus at all.
Not at all. He's not even part of the military, but he goes to a military base to throw the phone. Look, I have lots of old phones. I don't destroy the SIM card and find an incinerator or some kind of permanent destruction vehicle to get rid of it.
But also, did it not, again, these are people who work in law enforcement. Does it not go through your head that these messages went to someone else? So another phone out there, another record of the other side of this conversation.
I mean, that's where they got them, right? They got it from Karen's phone.
How did he think that? Yeah, if I throw my computer away right here, no one's going to read these emails. Well, yeah, I sent all the emails to other people.
Yeah.
Who the recipients have.
And
them.
There's a cloud. And, I guess, look, some people, right, think they're smarter than the average bear and they turn out to be nowhere near. But maybe that was it. He can't explain why he threw the phone out at the military base. It's and then let's
go.
Strange
choice too.
I mean, what a crazy thing. And how guilty do you look, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about butt dialing, because there seemed to be an epidemic of butt dialing going on in this community real late at night. Let's start with Jen McCabe. She says that she was butt dialing the victim, John O'Keefe in this case, sometime around, I don't know, after 1 a.m. I think it was between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Right. So that's weird. But there is a theory as to why she might be calling his. If you're Karen Reed, there's a theory as to why you might be calling.
She called him earlier. He was one of the last people she called or was texting with in the communication, because he said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm coming in," and he never did. For me, if that were my friend, I would have called a bunch of times to be like, "Hey, where are you?"
That's good. That's the state.
But then I wouldn't say it was a butt dial. I would say
it's a butt
he
dial.
Didn't come in.
I called him to
if you said you were in my driveway and you never came in the door, I would be like, "Hello, where are you?"
And that would be a legitimate, again, reasonable thing to say. I talked to him when he was in the driveway, and then hours later he hadn't come in, and I called to find out where he was. That's not what she said. What she said is, it must have been a butt dial. My calls later to John O'Keefe's phone must have been a butt dial, to which Karen Reed says, bullshit. You know what those were? You dialed over and over again to find his phone because you might have been part of this conspiracy to get rid of him, and you needed to know that his phone wasn't somewhere around. That sounds plausible.
Mm-hmm. What do you do, too, when you butt dial and you realize it? You text the person and you say, "I'm sorry, it was a butt dial." If I accidentally call you and I hang up real quick, or I do it a bunch of times, I say, "Ash, I'm so sorry. That butt dial, I was sitting on my phone, or the phone was under someone else's butt because the butts were dialing."
Wait, unless you don't know that you butt dialed till later that morning, and you're like, "Oh, Correct. Look at me, dumb last night." But who knows?
But we're to believe that she didn't realize that she butt dialed him a bunch of times, and that two other people in that house were also butt dialing each other, and nobody sent a text to say "oops."
Nobody said it. Yeah, nobody sent an "oops" text. Okay, so the second set of butt dialing, again, epidemic that night, is between Brian Higgins. This is the ATF cop who is at the party and has been having sexy talk, via text with Karen Reed, and Brian Albert, the owner of the house. And one dials the other, and the other one dials the other one back, and they talk for, I think, 12 seconds or something like that. And what do they say when they're asked about what they were doing, calling and dialing each other at 2 a.m? It
was butt dials.
Butt dial.
Butt dial.
Butt dial.
Also, if it's a 12-second, so the butt dial, you butt dialed and you butt answered? You were 12 seconds? The call went through. So it's just you butt dialed and butt answered someone in the same place as you and nobody noticed? That's
Caitlyn,
ridiculous.
we need t-shirts. We need t-shirts. I butt dialed, he butt answered.
Answered. That doesn't make a lick of sense, at all.
It doesn't. Okay, now I want to get to something that I teased earlier, and that is the woman scorned stuff. I have my theories about being a woman scorned because, come on, who among us hasn't been a woman scorned at some point? So Karen's voicemails to John O'Keefe screaming, "John, where are you, you pervert? I'm here looking after your kids." I have a terrible Boston accent, but she's screaming at the top of her lungs. She is so angry at this guy. She is resentful that she's having to look after his kids. She's at his house. She's dialing him over and over and leaving these angry voicemails, which the prosecution shows. Look how angry she is at him. She definitely had the anger, enough anger to drive into him at 24 miles an hour, to which I say, if I was so angry that I drove into someone at 24 miles an hour, boom, bang, it had to be a big bang because that was a big injury and it killed him. I am not using that tone of voice later at night. I am not screaming that he's a pervert, which is a weird choice. I am angry if I'm using that tone of voice and that choice of words because I think he's cheating on me with someone. I think he went into that house and he's cheating with another girl and he's not coming home and I'm having to babysit his damn kids. That's the tone of voice that I hear from her. I do not hear a woman who is just hours, having knocked him out with her car. I hear an angry woman who is pissed that he is with another woman.
That's such a good point. If you did something violent out of anger, why would you then make it very clear in a recording that you were pissed?
Right.
Furious.
Why would you call him a pervert?
And why would you at the same time? Like, that's such an odd tone and term to say to someone, unless you had reason to believe he was being a perv in some way. Yeah, that's
to me. Yeah. To me, those voicemails, play them again in your head. And listener, if you are thinking this through, even if you're a dude, trust me on the woman scorned, the tone of voice, the choice of word, the screaming, the constant calling, that is someone who is assuming he's with another woman and he's not coming home.
And she wants to be heard.
And I'm looking after your damn kids. You're using me. She even says it. You're using me. She's so angry. You're using me. I'm looking after your kids, you pervert. She thinks he's with another guy. She doesn't think, I knocked you out. If that were the case, she should be saying, just let me know you're okay.
Yep.
Damn it. Let me know you're okay. You're making me crazy. You're making me scared now. I'm really getting worried. But she doesn't say any of those words. It's you pervert. You pervert. You're using me. Yeah,
the texts too. She was also, it wasn't just voicemails. Mm-hmm. She was calling, she was leaving voicemails. She was sending them really angry texts all at that time. Now, if the timeline was reversed, if all of this happened and then she dropped him off, oh, I can see it. But you're right. Why would you do that and then call and call and call so angry?
Right. You wouldn't.
That doesn't, unless you didn't know you did it.
Unless you didn't know you did it.
Like you said, and like we both kind of talked about, unless she didn't potentially see him, she's backing up. He slips. He's on the ground. That's why he doesn't have the injury. And then there you go.
But then that could be manslaughter. And that's not happy time behind bars either. But
Nope.
All I can say is that even if I were absolutely 3 sheets to the wind drunk and I hit someone at 24 miles an hour intending to back up into them 60 feet, that bump is loud and it jars your car. You know you have hit a 200-pound thing, a deer, a person, whatever. You know it. So you're not going to black out on that either. That was a huge moment.
Wouldn't you hear it in the house too?
Not if there's music and yelling and partying and stuff going on. Who knows?
That's true.
They didn't, I don't know if they heard the screaming and yelling and the arguing between them. Who knows?
Right.
Okay, big one. Medical examiner. The medical examiner has the cause of death, blunt force trauma, and hypothermia. I get that.
Yeah.
But manner of death, undetermined. They do not say homicide. They do not say suicide. They do not say accident. They say undetermined, which to me leaves a massive piece of reasonable doubt for a juror.
If the person investigating the body itself can't tell you how the manner with which they died, that's a big question. That is a huge question. Of course, blunt force trauma and hypothermia makes a ton of sense. You can see it. He was in the cold. His head had an injury. Absolutely. To, at this point, not have been able to determine that this was a homicide or an accident is troubling for the prosecution, for sure.
Big time. You know what else is troubling for the prosecution? The snowplow driver. Apparently, he's like a hero in town. Everybody loves this guy, this snowplow driver. He's driving by at 2:30 in the morning. Again, this would be long after John would have been dead and lying in the snow. And he is driving right by the home. And his side lights are on. His front lights are on. He says everything was operating just fine. He knows his business. He's like the quintessential committed snowplow driver. I grew up in Winnipeg. They exist. They're amazing people. And he says, I absolutely saw the area by the flagpole and there was no body there. There was no mound there. I would have seen it. I would have noticed it. Don't talk to me about a big blizzard covering them in snow. Yes, that can happen, but you would see a mound. Not for another many hours of snowfall like that. Might that mound have been obscured? At 2:30 in the morning, the mound would not have been obscured. The body might not have even been covered at that point. And that snowplow driver was certain.
That's roughly 10, 15 minutes after How's Long to Die in Cold was Googled.
That's right.
So you've got a potential timeline there. If I'm the defense saying this happened inside, they're figuring out what to do with this guy. Snowplow goes by. We know they're questioning whether or not to die in the cold. What's the answer? Maybe it's a couple of hours. And they say, let's throw him out there. Because he wasn't dead right away. He wasn't dead when they got on the scene. He lived a little bit longer. I mean, CPR was done on the scene. We also don't know what the body looked like when it was found, because we don't have photos. So they would have been able to say to the snowplow driver, did you see this?
Right.
And he could have said, yes, no, absolutely not. That is not what it looked like. So we're just going on the fact that if he probably would have seen something, he would have called 911. But the timing of the Google search and the driver driving by, it sticks out to me.
Let me ask you something as we wrap. What's your over-under? Do you think that she'll get off? Do you think there'll be a conviction? Do you think there'll be another hung jury?
I think there's I could see another hung jury. I really could. Because every time I talk about this case, I come to a different conclusion. I think that if they would have charged Karen Read with involuntary manslaughter, it was an accident, you didn't know you did it, oops, she would have pled out, and this never would have been a case. But because they're going after her for such a serious charge and saying that she did this maliciously with intent, she knew it and she left him for dead, I don't think they're going to get a jury to believe that. But I also don't think there is enough evidence of this like third party of it was definitely this person for the defense that the jury is going to be able to see it the other way. So I could potentially see another hung jury. What about you?
Well, at first I thought another hung jury and that they would try her a third time. I did. And I'll listen, my godmother was murdered, and I'm only like laughing because her husband, my dad's best man, was tried for her murder, and it took 3 trials. Yeah. So I know it can happen. 3 trials. The first one, he's convicted. It was overturned because the police did ugly stuff. The second one, he was hung jury. And the third one, he was convicted. Wow. So yeah. So I do know that it can happen. But the more I look into all of it, the more I think it's possible that this jury will say, she sure as hell did not intend to do it. Because I think those voicemails tell you everything, right? But I think she was drunk. She backed up. She didn't realize she'd done it, or she was too drunk to realize that bang was a person, not something else. And she left the scene of an accident. She left the scene of a deadly accident. So I think she may actually get convicted on the 2 lesser counts. I think she might. I do not think she's going to be convicted of murder, though.
I agree. I definitely agree with that one.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. You're amazing. Will you do this again?
Absolutely. Anytime,
Yay! Ash. Love you, Caitlyn. Thank you for this. And so here we are. 1 year after the first trial collapsed into a mistrial, we are right back where we started, and things are even more heated. Karen Read's team says this was never about her car. It's about what happened inside that house at 34 Fairview Road. It's about power and protection and a blue wall that does not crack. The Commonwealth says it's about a drunk and angry woman who acted on impulse and killed her police officer boyfriend. And now, with a fresh jury and an expanded defense team and cameras watching every single move, the rematch is on. 1 woman, 1 dead cop, and 2 completely different versions of what happened that night. I'll be following every moment of this trial. Let me know in the comments on YouTube or in the reviews section of the trial recaps and in the coverage of this case if there's something that you'd like to hear more of. And always love to know if you like or hate what I'm doing. I read the comments and I take them into account, and I appreciate everything you say. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and please remember, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.